The Fisherman's Curse. How did I end up in this fishing village? My story is not an ordinary one. It is a tale of the sea, of the deep, of something that should never have been disturbed. We were hunting tuna off the coast of Sicily, our small boat cutting through the dark waters as the sun bled into the horizon. The ocean was calm, almost unnaturally so. No wind, no sound, just the rhythmic sloshing of water against the hull. We had been at sea for days, following the schools of fish, casting our nets, waiting. The captain, an old Sicilian named Marco, muttered that something was wrong. He had fished these waters for over 30 years, and he swore the sea had never been this. Still, the others laughed at his superstitions, but I could feel it too. Something was watching us. It began with the lights. Strange, shifting glows beneath the surface, deep below where our nets could reach. At first, we thought they were bioluminescent creatures, perhaps jellyfish or strange deep-sea fish brought up by the currents. But these lights did not move like living things. They pulsed, flickered, and shifted as if something enormous was breathing beneath us. Then came the noise. A deep, inhuman sound, like the groaning of the earth itself, rose from the abyss. It vibrated through our bones, sent shivers up our spines. Marco clutched his cross, whispering prayers under his breath. The others ignored him. Then the boat lurched. Something struck us from below with the force of a hurricane. Wood splintered, water surged over the deck. I was thrown against the mast, my vision blurring from the impact. The others screamed. One of them, Giovanni, was yanked overboard by something unseen. His cry was cut short as he vanished beneath the churning water. Panic, chaos. We grabbed whatever we could to stay afloat, but the boat was breaking apart. Then I saw them. Caves. Massive, yawning caverns beneath the sea, glowing with that same unnatural light. Their walls pulsed, shifting, almost alive. They stretched deep, deeper than they should, twisting in impossible ways. Shapes moved within them, things I could not comprehend. And then the pain. A crushing force wrapped around me, pulling me down. My lungs burned, my limbs went numb. I could not scream, I could not fight. The light surrounded me, filled my mind with incomprehensible whispers. I should have drowned, but I didn't. Instead there was brightness, blinding, searing brightness, then darkness, and then the shore. I woke to the sound of waves crashing, my face pressed into wet sand, my clothes drenched in salt water. The air smelled wrong, like rotting fish and something else, something foul and ancient. I pushed myself up, my body aching, my head spinning. I was no longer at sea. I was here. A village, old and crumbling, stood before me. Small wooden houses, battered by time and weather, lined the shore. Their windows were dark, empty. A church bell tolled in the distance, though I saw no church. The people found me soon after. They did not speak, not at first. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes too large, too dark. They wore thick coats and scarves despite the warm air. When they did speak, their words were not of any language I knew. Their voices were hoarse, rasping, as if their throats had long forgotten how to form words. One of them, an old man with skin like dried leather, stepped forward. His black eyes studied me, his lips moving as if reciting something under his breath. Then he spoke, his voice thick with something unnatural. "You are not the first." I shivered. The villagers took me in, gave me dry clothes, fed me fish that tasted of decay. They watched me as I ate, whispering among themselves in their strange tongue. At night I could not sleep. The walls of my small hut felt too thin. The wind outside carried voices, low, guttural chants from unseen throats. And the sea was calling me. I heard it in my dreams, in the space between wakefulness and sleep. A voice, ancient and slow, whispering my name. It wants me back. I do not know how I came here, but I fear I will not leave. I fear that soon I will not want to. The Thing in the Grotto. We were young, carefree, and foolish, as most people are before they learn that the world is not as simple as it seems. The ocean had always been a place of joy for us. Long summer nights on the shore, the scent of salt in the air, the laughter of friends echoing over the waves. That summer, we rented a small beach house, close enough to the water that we could hear the waves even in our sleep. The days were filled with swimming, grilling fish, and drinking cold beer under the scorching sun. We felt invincible. 50 meters from the beach stood the grotto, a massive rock formation, its hollowed-out center forming a dark, yawning cavern. It had been there for centuries, standing like a silent guardian of the coast. Tour boats frequently drifted inside, their passengers snapping photos of the strange natural wonder. Some of the locals claimed the grotto was cursed. We laughed at them, until the day everything changed. The sea was calm that afternoon, almost unnaturally so. No wind, no waves, just a glassy surface reflecting the sun like a giant mirror. I remember noticing it because the silence felt heavy, suffocating. Even the seagulls had stopped crying. A tour boat entered the grotto. I barely paid attention. It was a common sight. Then something odd happened. The boat stopped. It didn't drift forward, didn't turn back. It just stayed there, swallowed by the cavern's shadow. The people aboard, tiny dots in the distance, stood still. No movement, no gestures, just frozen figures against the dark mouth of the grotto. Then the water shifted. It wasn't a wave. It wasn't the tide. It was something moving beneath the surface, a vast, enormous presence. And then came the sound, a low, vibrating groan, impossibly deep, as if the sea itself was speaking. It wasn't something you just heard. It pressed into your bones, crawled beneath your skin. The boat erupted into chaos. Passengers ran to the railings, pointing, screaming. The captain struggled with the controls, trying to reverse out of the grotto. But it was too late. A limb, if you could call it that, rose from the water. It was massive, covered in dark, slick scales, shifting with a sickening fluidity. It was not the limb of a fish, nor a tentacle. It was something far older, something that did not belong to this world. The strike came fast. The grotesque limb slammed into the boat with unthinkable force. The vessel split in half as if it were nothing more than driftwood. Bodies flung into the air. Some hit the water, others hit the rocks. We were already running toward the shore. Some of us sprinted toward the sea, toward the survivors. Some turned and fled without looking back. I didn't think, I just moved. I remember diving into the water, the salt stinging my eyes. A man thrashed beside me, screaming in terror. I grabbed him, dragging him toward the shore. Behind us, others did the same, pulling people from the wreckage, from the waves. But some never resurfaced. The sea opened beneath them, pulling them into the abyss. A final deafening roar came from the grotto, and then silence. The water stilled. The wreckage bobbed harmlessly on the surface. The thing had vanished. The authorities came. They blamed a sudden underwater collapse, a freak accident. They cleaned up the remains of the boats, removed the bodies. No one spoke of what we had seen. No news reports mentioned an enormous limb. No officials questioned why some of the bodies were never found. But we knew. We knew. And since that day, I have never swum in the ocean again, because I know what lurks beneath, and I know that it is still waiting. The last train. I don't remember exactly when the world ended. Maybe it was the day the sky turned sickly green, choked with chemical fumes. Maybe it was the night our neighbors clawed at our door, their skin melting, their eyes bleeding, screaming for help we could not give. Or maybe it ended long before that, when men in power decided that life itself was expendable. What I do remember is this: the city was dying and we had to leave. My wife and I had lived here for years, watched the streets go from bustling to barren, from safe to slaughter. The first weeks of the chemical war were the worst. The gas crept in through the cracks in buildings, into the lungs of those too slow or too poor to escape. Those who didn't die outright changed. Some became monsters, their bodies twisted by the toxins into things that no longer resembled human beings. Others remained human, but became something far worse. Cannibals. With no food, no order, no hope, the city turned on itself. People butchered their neighbors, their families. The strong hunted the weak. But we had a plan. The railway station at the edge of the city was still intact. A rusting freight train sat on the tracks, long abandoned but repairable. If we could fix it, fuel it, get it moving, we could escape. We just needed parts. And we had to survive long enough to find them. The first run. The first supply run was a nightmare. We knew the mechanical district, once home to auto shops and factories, would have what we needed. What we didn't know was how many others had the same idea. As we moved through the ruined streets, we saw them, mutants. Their flesh was warped, skin peeling in patches, bones protruding at unnatural angles. Some crawled on all fours, sniffing the air. Others stood, their hollow eyes scanning, listening. We stayed low, crept through alleys, but they smelled us. The first attack was sudden, clawed hands bursting from the shadows, a grotesque, elongated mouth snapping inches from my face. My wife fired first. The shot echoed through the dead city, a signal to every creature nearby. We grabbed what we could, tools, wires, engine parts, and ran. They swarmed. Not just the mutants. The cannibals heard the noise too. They came from the ruined buildings, dragging their makeshift weapons, their teeth filed into points. I don't remember how we made it back. I remember the scream. We weren't the only ones trying to escape. On our second run for fuel, we found a family hiding in a collapsed supermarket. A mother and her 2 children, barely clinging to life. The woman's eyes were hollow, her hands trembling as she held a rusted knife. She didn't trust us. I didn't blame her. We gave them food, promised them safety. She hesitated, then nodded. The next day, we saved an old engineer, a man who had once worked on the railway. He had been surviving alone, scavenging in the ruins. He told us he could fix the train faster than we ever could. That night, we heard howls. Something was watching us. Something big. Nash, the escape. The train was almost ready. We had patched the engine, fueled the tanks, reinforced the doors. We only needed one more part, a vital coolant system, deep in the industrial zone. We made our way through the chemical fog, our masks barely keeping the poison out. The streets were worse than before. The mutants were evolving, bigger, smarter, hungrier. Inside the factory, we found the part, but we also found them. The largest mutant we had ever seen, a towering skinless beast, its bones exposed, its many eyes blinking in different directions, was waiting. We ran. Bullets did nothing. The thing kept coming. We barely made it back to the train. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. The survivors jumped aboard. The monster charged. We pulled the lever. The train lurched forward, and then, finally, we were moving. The journey ahead, we left the city behind, its ruins shrinking into the poisoned horizon. But the world beyond was no better. The war had turned everything to ash and death, but we had a chance. And as long as this train kept moving, we would find a new home, or die trying.